but will not live to see it. Since September, the Islamic Republic of Iran saw the largest and most radical anti-regime protests in its 43-year history. It was sparked by the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini. Regime protests in its 43-year history. It was sparked by the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini in the custody of the so-called morality police. Her crime? Not wearing her hijab properly. Life seems to have returned to normal, and around 22,000 demonstrators who were arrested have been pardoned.
People can't stay on the streets forever. The movement is far from over. Things are only getting started.
This is something that will take time, because it's also a cultural issue.
Mahmoud and Raha, their names have been changed to protect their identities, are in their 20s and have been taking action in the uprising.
The protests here have changed form. People are continuing the unrest through graffitis, burning street signs, taking down CCTV cameras and planning other forms of attack.
And the monitoring of the hijab has been tightened at universities.
We now have hijab security at the university's entrance. If we're showing too much hair, they don't allow us in. If we get a second warning, then we can get excluded from the university. But away from the security, we drop our headscarves.
Mahmoud risks torture, imprisonment and even death at the hands of the Islamic Republic for just speaking with me. But he's adamant to share his experience of the lethal crackdown in the hands of the regime during the protests.
One evening, the anti-protest police raided us. I was running away when I heard a motorbike behind me. Then he shot me.
Mahmoud avoided arrest, but was left seriously wounded. Footage given exclusively to Sky News reveals the extent of his injuries. He'd been hit by pellets from a gun.
I had around 250 pellets inside me. After 4 hours on the operating table, medics only managed to pull out around 30.
Mahmoud was told that the rest would have to remain in his body, meaning he's unable to leave the country.
I now constantly live in fear of being identified in case someone sees my scars. I cannot go through any metal detecting gates because the metal left in my body could identify me as a protester. I would be looking at anything between years of imprisonment to even execution.
But Raha and Mahmoud aren't deterred.
You can't keep scaring people forever. There is only one way forward, and that's a revolution.
When we know the law protects us, instead of oppressing us, then we will have the freedom to claim our rights.
Street demonstrations may have eased for now, but daring displays of public defiance remain. And as the regime desperately tries to conceal traces of their disobedience, the protesters persist. The regime must go. Sahar Zand, Sky News.
Joining us now is the campaigner and former political prisoner, Shiva Mahboubi. Shiva, good to talk to you this afternoon. What do the women of Iran, in Iran, want the world to know?
The women in Iran want the world knows that the women life freedom revolution is still going on. You have shown some of the footages that despite the heavy crackdown since September, women are still refusing to wear hijab, and they see that as their right. And at the same time, people in Iran, women in Iran, wants the international community and specifically the governments around the world, including the UK government, to put the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, IRGC, on the list of terrorist organizations.
And in terms of the resistance movement that did capture the world media's attention in the last weeks and months, the very sort of public protestations, what would trigger that to happen again, do you think?
I think if you look at Iran, the protest, the revolution is happening in different forms and shapes. Right now, there are different sections of the society, such as workers, teachers, retirees, are on strike. Another part of it, the families and people are constantly gathering on the cemetery, on the grave of those who were killed by the Islamic regime, and they're chanting against the regime, and they're saying, we're not going to give back. But one of the most notable one is the women refusing to wear hijab, as you've shown. So therefore, I think they keep saying that we're going to come back on the street because this is a revolution that obviously is in process. And at the same time, I think there are thousands of, I know that there are thousands of people still detained in prison. And even from the prison, the messages we get that we're not going to give up. So we will see these people on the streets again. But it's important for people around the world, and especially in the UK, to know that this revolution hasn't finished and they need to give them a constant support. I must emphasize that here. Again, as I said in the beginning, that the main force of the Islamic regime, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, IRGC, is the one who committing crime inside Iran, not just inside Iran, but also outside of Iran. As you perhaps know, and I think you interviewed this person, the Iranian British citizen, Vahid Beheshti, has been on hunger strike for more than a month outside of the Foreign Office with the same demand, put the IRGC on the list of terrorist acts. You're asking me, what's going to happen? You're asking me like what people need to know. The IRGC is not just committing crime against people in Iran, it's outside of Iran. Just a while ago, the MI5 warned one of the Iranian TV channel that they cannot protect them from the terrorist act from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. And this means that James Cleverly and Rishi Sunak must not basically refuse to put this organization on the list of terrorist organization. Other than that, all British citizens are in danger. So what I'm trying to say, the revolution in Iran, what's happening right now is not just about Iran. It's about having a safer world without the Islamic regime. And I guess right now, women in Iran, people in Iran, are desperate to get people's attention and solidarity and putting the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, IRGC, on the list of terror. It's the most important support that the British government, Rishi Sunak, James Cleverly can do for people in Iran. And I would basically ask every British citizen to write to their own MPs. You must remember that majority of MPs in the UK are for putting IRGC on the list of terrorist organizations.
But Shiva, you will know as well as anybody, somebody who has been a former political prisoner yourself, that the stakes for people who are really the engine room of the uprising couldn't be higher.
No, you're right. I mean, obviously, that's why I'm emphasizing on this issue, really, because myself, my prison mates, they were all tortured, sexually assaulted, raped by the same IRGC. And right now, it's the same. When you see these brave women, you just shown the footage that despite being shot at their eyes, they lost an eye, they've been raped, they've been imprisoned, but they're still saying we refuse to give up and we're gonna come back on the street, and they refuse to wear hijab. They've been forced to pay fine. They've been sentenced to prison and flogging. They've been deprived of going to their work. Some of the pharmacies, they cannot even go to work because they refuse not to wear hijab. So they're paying the price, people in Iran. The question is what the Rishi Sunak and James Cleverly gonna do? I know that I keep repeating that because if they want to support people in Iran, this is the main thing. Put the IRGC on the list of terrorist lists so they stop hostage taking. British Iranians are still in prison, so basically their hands are tied to suppress people in Iran. This is how we can target it.
All right, Shiva Mahboubi, good to talk to you this afternoon. Thank you.